Whoa, what's happening? Thank you, everybody, for checking us out. It's time for Adam Rank versus the Machine. And of course, that means Doc Ross is here. Doc, how are you feeling? We're 1 week away, or, one set of games away from determining who's going to be in the Super Bowl. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It was a really fun weekend of games, fun to watch, interesting matchups, and interesting results. So, yeah, I'm excited. How could you not be?
No, because the Packers are close to going to the Super Bowl,
Yeah,
which
sorry.
is, so
My
I'm not,
condolences. Yeah.
I'm not super great about it. I do want to tell people, oh my God, the Bears hat just fell. Oh, I got to fix. There's some eternal. So, by the way, anybody who's listening to this as part of the Adam Rank podcast, first of all, thank you for doing that. Thank you to Mitch Hine for putting it all together. But those of us who are streaming with us know that we do this live, and I'm in my studio, and my studio is falling apart. My Bears hat just fell down right when I said that the Packers were close to going to the Super Bowl. I don't know what that means, but I do know that I was perfect last week. I was a perfect 3-1 because I'm not going to pick the Packers to win. Like that, you should know this by now. And if you take out all the homerism where I picked the Bears to beat the Saints, I picked the Packers to lose to the Rams, I've lost only one game outside of that set. So I would currently be, there was what? We were 3-3, 3-1, 6-3. So 6-3 with two of those games being homer losses. But
That's good.
I feel pretty good. What was the Machine? Remind me, what was the Machine last week?
Machine went 2-2. So,
Oh.
yeah. Very just a little disappointed with
Oh.
the New Orleans Tampa Bay result.
So rank is the Machine. I think we're starting to. Now I know that we want to look forward and we're going to make some game picks and we're going to get to that in a second. But before we look forward, let's take a moment to look back.
Yeah.
What was it that stood out? Why did the Bucks win this game? I know you went back and looked at some of the research. What do you think was the biggest thing that stood out to you?
Well, it's the turnovers from the Saints. I mean, the Bucks played fine and they played well enough, and Brady certainly played much better than he had the two previous meetings with the Saints. No question about it. I mean, he couldn't have done much worse. But the question to me is, and what's interesting about three of these games is similar to this one, in that I feel like there's a little bit of flukiness in New Orleans having four turnovers. I mean, obviously that's part of the game, but you got to wonder how much that helped Tampa Bay. Obviously,
A lot. Like that's
yeah,
the thing. Like if you can help create turnovers, you're going to have a better chance of winning. You hear coaches talk about that all the time. And I know that the Bills game, a lot of people said it was boring and it was like, it wasn't that great of a game. And I know that we probably expected a little bit more, especially with two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. What do you think was the key to that game?
well, that one is also a little fluky. I mean, you look at that one, the Baltimore won that game statistically, basically every category. But then Justin Tucker, who's normally Mr. Automatic, misses two field goals in the win.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at that 101-yard pick six that Lamar Jackson throws, that's a 14-point swing, which turns out to be the margin. I mean, arguably they would have scored a touchdown there, you would have hoped, or at least come away with points. So it was really interesting to me because, and again, of course, it's part of the game, no question about it, but the Bills lost statistically in a lot of ways in that game. So it was interesting to see them come away with a win.
Well, don't upset the Bills fans just yet, because we don't want to get them.
Wait till we get to the picks. I'll make them happy.
You know what? They are upset at me. Now, earlier this year, back in June, I do picks, and I picked the Bills to go 9-7. So it's not like I picked them to be a disaster.
It wasn't the San Francisco 3-13.
Wasn't the San Francisco 3-13. The opposite almost of that. But 9-7, I'm like, you guys are going to be good. There's going to be some variance. I could see you easily going 11-5 or whatever. And this is before, COVID opt-outs and everything like that. So I'm really sort of working blind a little bit. So they're mad at, they're looking to be mad at me. And I'm like, I said you were going to be a winning football team. I have been picking you guys seemingly every week this year. Like you go back and you look at the picks that we put on NFL.com. Most of the time I'm picking the Bills. I think the only time I didn't pick you, I know for sure, is I don't think I did. No, I did pick the Rams to beat you in week 3. But most of the time, I've been pro Bills. And I was even the one that went to the Blue Meanie who helped get that Blue World Order shirt over. Because I tweeted out, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised Bills fans don't wear Blue World Order shirts. And Brian, the Blue Meanie, went out there and made specific Bills themed Blue World Order shirts, which, by the way, you can find on Pro Wrestling Tees. But he went out and made those shirts. So I'm Mr. Buffalo. I don't know why you guys are upset with me. So please don't be. I've got your back. Although, we might as well start with this game, the Bills versus the Chiefs. Let's talk about this game a little bit. Now, you did talk a little bit about the flukiness and everything that was going on. I will say this. The Bills will be playing their first AFC Championship game since 1993. And in the 1993 AFC Championship game, the Buffalo Bills defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. So obviously the trends are there. The Bills have won their last 4 AFC Championship game appearances. They had lost their 2 previous ones, and I'm trying to remember the 2 previous ones. I think there was one in the late 80s. I think it was 88, and I probably should have looked this up because that would make me look a lot smarter. But listen, I'm Rank. This is my brand. Like, I should know this stuff. But I think 88, they lost. Who would they have lost to? Who went to the Super Bowl in 88? The Bengals? I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll look it up while you're talking and pretend like I came up with it on my own. But they did. They've won their last. So, and none of that matters. I mean, none of that. Who cares? Like, it doesn't. Like, those guys. Half these guys weren't even alive when those games were being played. So it's all good. But no, none of them would have been alive. 94. Like, there's no all these players are born in like the 2000s, right? Are we not there? 21. Like, we're pretty close. Anyways, the thing is, how do you see this matchup going? Bills versus Chiefs. What is the machine seeing?
Well, here's where I'm going to make Buffalo fans happy. I mean, I think so. Machine actually favors the Bills slightly outright, even taking into account that Mahomes presumably will start.
What?
29-28 by a point. So high scoring game, just a 1-point margin, but favors the Bills outright.
Oh my gosh. What is the key? Why do they like that?
Well, we can talk about some of the stats that we've seen in the average for these teams, but just to round out sort of the flukiness of the weekend before, KC, they played pretty well, but it wasn't like an overwhelming performance, although Mahomes was out for part of that, of course. But they had their own sort of fluky thing where there was that touchdown for Cleveland. I think, who was it? I forget the guy's name, but the touchdown where he fumbled out of the end zone.
Higgins.
Higgins, yeah. And there should have been maybe a personal foul called. And so, a little bit of flukiness there where they could have, Cleveland easily could have had a touchdown there. And the margin on the game was only 5, I think, right? So, KC played well enough, and certainly it hurts to have Mahomes out, but you have to wonder if they're really, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, that is the one thing that stands out to me as well. And I think, this goes back to something that we were talking about leading up to that game, was how much of an impact was it going to be to taking off week 17, not playing, obviously the following week, they were the only team in the AFC who had a bye, and was that kind of sloppiness going to come back to haunt them? We've seen that from a lot of teams. We saw it last year with the Tennessee Titans when they came in to Baltimore and ended up just running all over them. Yeah. The Ravens were the number 1 seed, and then they ended up losing, which gave the Chiefs the home game in the AFC title game against the Titans. A lot of times, these teams that rest players in week 17 with an additional, that's too long to be off. So I think that could kind of go into why that game was a little bit fluky. And I think even watching the Chiefs over the entirety of the season, there were a lot of times where it felt like they were kind of just toying with their food. They weren't really into it. They weren't emotionally invested, which is fine when it's week 8 and you're playing a lower division team, but you can't do that in the playoffs. And it almost came back to bite them. But we did see how well coached this team is with Andy Reid and with Eric Bieniemy. And Eric Bieniemy, it's funny that he doesn't get enough credit for everything that's going on. And I was going to say Lord knows why, but we all know why. But the thing is, why, I think this Chiefs team is so well coached. And it's just one of those instances where Andy Reid, now that he's finally removed that chip, that chip off his shoulder of not winning the big one, that now he's like fun Andy Reid. Like everything that made Andy Reid great, he was always a yeah, but coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a great coach. Yeah, but he never won a Super Bowl. Yeah, but he couldn't make it. And a lot of that was holding him back. Now he's got a Super Bowl. And I really do believe, and I'm going to get ahead of myself, and when the playoffs started, actually when the season started, going back to my June picks, I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. When the playoffs started, I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. And I think that this is going to be the kind of thing that leads up to Andy Reid being in that conversation of one of the greatest coaches of all time. And so I have a lot of confidence in them. So to me, I don't know. I mean, outside of the flukiness, what is it about the machine that is still leading it towards Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the flukiness on Buffalo's side and how they sort of lost the Baltimore game statistically, but they still have won 8 straight, I think now.
8 consecutive games. Since week 11. The Green Bay Packers, the only other team over that stretch, they're 7-0 to not lose a game as well. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. But yeah, so they obviously are finding ways to win games, and they do very well on the road with rushing yards and time of possession. So even though they had this game against Baltimore where they didn't do quite as well as you might have expected, when you look at the averages in the recent games and the games over their winning streak, they're doing well. They're playing really well. So, and like I said, Kansas City, not only against Cleveland, but even when you look back at some of their recent home games, they're not really dominating any particular category. Now they've got an amazing coach. They've got an MVP quarterback. So you can't ever rule them out, of course. But I think that's why the machine likes Buffalo even, to win outright, because they, even taking away the Baltimore game, they're playing really well in recent past.
Yeah, and you were talking about the Bills' winning streak. And Josh Allen, over that span, has averaged over 300 passing yards per game. His passer rating is north of 111. And you know what? You look at him and Stephon Diggs. I don't think there's a duo who's had better chemistry since Luke Wilson and Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers. Like, they're that kind of good. Like, they have that kind of, like, they feel like they've played together for a decade. Like, they feel like they're in sync.
That was a great trade.
As and honestly, I know you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, so it's funny because you can't get upset about it, because the first round pick that you received in exchange for Stephon Diggs went to Justin Jefferson, who's going to be on a team-friendly deal for another 4 years that you're going to be able to tag. Like, that worked out for, it's one of those things, it's one of those situations that worked out well for both teams. And I'm happy. I'm not happy for the Vikings because they suck, but I'm happy for the Bills. I'm happy for Stephon Diggs. Number one, because I can now root for Stephon Diggs openly and not have to worry about it feeling dirty, because you're rooting for a Viking. You don't want to do that. Like, you don't want to give them too much credit, but you love that. And Stephon Diggs is the 6th player in the Super Bowl era with at least 230 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the playoffs with multiple teams, because he's done it with the Vikings and he's done it with the Bills. So he's been able to do it. Some of the other greats who have also accomplished that feat: Jerry Rice. I don't know if you've heard of him. Keith Jackson, Plaxico Burress. And you might be like, oh, Plaxico Burress. Yeah. Super Bowl MVP. Like, if he wasn't the Super Bowl MVP, they probably gave it to Eli, but super critical to the Giants Super Bowl victory. Shannon Sharp, who of course is one of the greatest of all time. Frank Lewis. Okay, we're going back a ways, but Frank Lewis. Okay, fine. The thing is that this Bills team is doing great, and everything is moving forward. And the one thing that I do respect about the machine is that they always take out the machine takes out the romantic. Like, I think it's so easy for people just to think, like, oh, the Chiefs, like, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelce. Of course they're going to win. Like, the machine's just looking at it like a very cold, like a machine. Like, I guess that's the way to put it.
I mean, even I was surprised when that result spit out. But when you start looking at those things, I mean, you talked about the passing and Josh Allen, but their rushing yards are also very good. And their pass defense on the road is very good recently. Now, it's Patrick Mahomes, so, I don't know how much that's going to – he can do anything. But they do have all the right pieces, and they're a very well-rounded team. So, yeah, you could see it happen.
Well, you know what? And it's also because a lot of times what we saw with Chad Henne when he scrambled to get them in the 4th and 1 situation, almost got them the first down in that play. Patrick Mahomes is not the runner that Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen is, but when he needs to pick up yards with his legs, he's certainly able to do that. And you wonder how gun-shy he's going to be this week, coming off that concussion. I mean, he's at the time of this recording, I still don't even, like, is he cleared? Like, we expect him to be.
Yeah, right.
But is he cleared? So all this could be for naught, because I don't think that as well as Chad Henne played last week, and it was fun to see him go out there. And I know, and I feel bad that Phil Mattingly had to get fact-checked, because he had such a great tweet about, like, oh, Chad Henne finally beat a team from Ohio. And I was like, I laughed. I'm like, oh, that's savage. And then I'm like, I guarantee you they beat some Miami of Ohio or Toledo team. The first game that Chad Henne ever won in college was against Miami of Ohio. And I didn't want to go Daniel Dale on him because I always hate that. Like, he's making a joke. It's funny. But then there's people like, oh, not so fast. He beat Miami of Ohio. Like, well, you're obviously a salty Ohio State fan or a salty Michigan fan. That's not the hill that I want to die on. Let Mattingly have that one because it's making you look worse that you're laying claim to Miami of Ohio. Now, if you're Travis Prentice and you're making like you're upset about that, that's fine. Although I know Travis Prentice hadn't played there in a decade. That was the first Miami of Ohio player I could think of off the top of my head. But in any event, yeah, you know what? Like, whatever. And so if Chad Henne's the quarterback, I don't think the Chiefs obviously have a prayer or anything like that. So I love that the machine is just taking away the human emotion of just defaulting to the Chiefs. But I think I'm taking the Chiefs in that game. I'm sorry. I'm taking them. I've taken them. I've ridden it the whole way. And I know the Bills fans, this is when you can turn on me. This is when you can.
We have to create some tension.
Yeah. Well, you can cold take expose me on this one. Like, I'm a coward. I'm going to take, because I don't want to be the guy who, it's like going back and you're on the tee box and you're like, should I hit my 9? Should I hit my 8? You got the 8 in your hand. You're like, I'll go 9. And then you leave it short and you hit it in the sand trap. I don't want to be that guy. Like, I've committed to my club. I'm going with the Chiefs. I picked them in June. I picked them at the beginning of the playoffs. I'm going to stick with them, which is the dumbest way that you can do this, but it's Rank's approach and it's what I do. And it's allowed me to have this Cobra Kai jacket. So, which by the way, this is pretty sick, right?
I like it.
Are you a Cobra Kai fan?
I've not figured out the Cobra Kai yet. I thought my Bryce Harper Philly sweatshirt was pretty good.
You know what? The lower third is covering it up too much, so I apologize.
It's the Fanatic and Gritty.
Oh, look at that!
With a nod to Pulp Fiction, he wore it on opening day.
Love it. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna come to make fun of our mutual Angels fans.
Wait a minute! Don't make fun of my Angels. Don't make fun of the Angels. But in any event, so Machine is going with the Chiefs, or no? Machine's going Bills. Yeah. Rank's going Chiefs. And I'm having my score be above 60 combined points.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but I just think it's going to be a high-scoring game. You as well?
I did, yeah. 29-28, so what's that, 57 points? Almost, but not – it's high, not 60, but –
yeah. It's not 60, but I think this is going to be one of the more entertaining games. And what's not going to be entertaining is the Packers and the Buccaneers. Let's move on.
Did you give us the score?
I said it was above. Listen, I don't have the. You know what? I had the score. Listen, here's my thing. I got to go and look at it because I do this thing. I'm thrown off because we had Monday off and I was spending time. I took my kids to the beach and made them. Let's see. I had Chiefs 35-31.
Okay.
So there we go. I will say this. The Packers. This is going to be the first playoff meeting between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. They've played 3 times in the regular season. Brady is 2-3 in those games, including week 6 this season. Brady has won Super Bowl in the previous 2 seasons in which they've played, which is significant to nobody because it means absolutely nothing. But it's it's a fun little note to put out there. And so looking at this game, before we get too far into this, I got to say a couple of things. The Packer fans are crowing a little bit much about beating the Rams' backup quarterback, Jared Goff, because their starter, John Wolford, was out. Aaron Donald was also out. Now this is an interesting. This is significant. The Packers gained close to 500 yards against the number 1 defense in the NFL, and that's never happened in playoff history. A number 1 defense has not been exposed that badly ever in the NFL playoffs, at least going back to 1970. I look at that, though, that Aaron Donald was obviously a lot more injured that he was letting on. He was not on the field a lot. They couldn't use him the way they wanted to use him. And I know it's one player and everything like that, but imagine if the Packers didn't have Aaron Rodgers, or he was hurting, or he had broken ribs or something like that, like you would still, the storyline would still be like, well, it was a good game, but Rodgers was hurt or whatever. The Rams are not in a position where anybody's going to make excuses of them. Like the Rams are not beloved in the national media the way the Packers are. So of course the storyline's going to be like, look at how great this Packers offense is. Unstoppable. Unstoppable. Again though, Aaron Rodgers had a couple of interceptions that were dropped. They kind of disappear in the third quarter. Like they don't look great after halftime. And I know that they ended up winning by a wide margin, but the Rams hung around long enough to where you're like, are the Rams going to win this? Are they going to somehow find a way to pull this out? And they needed one defensive stop where a guy like Aaron Donald might have really helped, but they weren't creating turnovers. I look at this game, and let me ask you. I look at this game, and you look at the pressure that the Buccaneers were able to put on Drew Brees to create 4 turnovers. Is the machine looking at stuff like that? Like perhaps they can pressure Aaron Rodgers into making a mistake or two that could mean the game here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah. I mean, certainly machine does look at, some of that is a little more nuanced than the machine can analyze. I mean, it'll certainly look at like passing defense and so forth. I don't know. I mean, it is an interesting way to look at this game because when you look statistically, Green Bay performed very well against the Rams. But as you point out, like they're missing some real key players. And it's hard to account for those things unless you get into some really high-level modeling techniques looking at individual players and stuff. So statistically, the machine is seeing that the Green Bay did extremely well against the Rams. They've won 7 in a row. Statistically, they're doing quite well. And so, it's hard. I don't know if it's going to be something where Tampa Bay's defense can really get after them. And I was going to say, Aaron Rodgers is obviously playing so well, and he generally seems to be able to handle that kind of pressure. But Drew Brees is like, he's not some nobody. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that Drew Brees can scramble. I mean, Drew Brees is a great athlete. We can see that he could dunk the football. He's done it before. Drew Brees is not Phillip Rivers in the pocket or anything like that.
Right.
But Aaron Rodgers, and this will be the part of the show where I say some nice things about Aaron Rodgers because he juked Leonard Floyd. And let me tell you, as a Bears fan, I'm all too familiar with that. Like Leonard Floyd, you still didn't learn, you dumb. What are you doing? You've played against this guy enough to know. Keep your feet on the ground. What are you doing? Like this isn't the first time you've ever seen Aaron Rodgers. You played him twice a year for the first 4 seasons of your career. You should know better. That was a terrible play. They should have held them to a field goal right there. But here's my thing with Aaron Rodgers. And this should give Packer fans, so anybody who thinks I'm biased and you hate listening to this or anything like that. Now, Tom Brady from 2005 to 2013 did not go to a Super Bowl. He had that long stretch that they didn't win a Super Bowl. Excuse me, they lost in 2007. But he had gone a long time without winning a Super Bowl. Actually, they lost twice to the Giants. But during that stretch, he was very good. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, 2-time MVP. Eventually, they broke through in 2014, won a Super Bowl. Now, Rodgers is in a similar 9-season Super Bowl winning drought. He has not gotten to the Super Bowl. He's lost in the NFC Championship game, but he's not gotten to the Super Bowl, but he's won a pair of MVPs. It sucks when I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the similarities. Both these quarterbacks had passer ratings around 100. They've been to multiple, Brady won 100 games during that stretch. Rodgers has won 86. And you're looking at it and you're like, Aaron Rodgers, like, honestly, could be in a situation where they now go on a little mini stretch. Because, of course, Tom Brady went on and won 3 Super Bowls in 5 seasons after he went through that skid. Aaron Rodgers is also in that same boat of like, this could be the first of many. Like, I hate even saying it, but it's like one of those things you look at and you're like, God damn it. Like, this could be the start of something. Like this doesn't feel like Aaron Rodgers is at the end of his career, even though they drafted his replacement this season. It's like, oh God, they could actually go on a run and they could actually go to multiple Super Bowls. And you look at some of the NFC teams, I think the Rams were probably a lot better than what they showed last week, but you're like, I don't feel comfortable about this. Like, it feels like the Packers are playing way too well.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel from a non-machine perspective. They just look really good, and they're at home. and Aaron Rodgers is having an MVP season. I mean, Tom Brady's obviously playing, as you said, he's playing nearly as well over the course of the whole season as Rodgers, but man, they look good at home.
No, for sure. And you know what? One of the things that's troubling too, the Buccaneers had so much success against Rodgers in week 6 because they're able to blitz him. And the Buccaneers were one of the best blitzing teams through the first 9 weeks of the season. But since week 9, they've allowed 13 touchdown passes with only 1 interception on the blitz. So they've been getting beat by the blitz, which means they're going to have to rush 4 against Aaron Rodgers, which always seems like a problem because he can extend plays with his legs and just do the things that to make teams pay, to where like it's really not an advantage. I know that, you know, Bears fans and everybody who's spamming or, you know, who's trolling Aaron Nagler and some of my other Packer friends, you know, like, oh, remember week 6 was a long ass time ago and the defense is playing way different and it still scares me.
Yeah. And you have to remember that was Aaron Rodgers' worst game of the year. I mean, you know, at some point you got to give the guy a mulligan. If they've seen that many games since then where they can dissect the Bucs defense and figure out their patterns, especially when they've had less success since then, I'm not going to put too much stock in Aaron Rodgers having what I think was probably an unusually bad game.
Yeah, so I'm happy to sit there and tell people to stop throwing out that narrative of week 6 because it doesn't matter.
It's too long, yeah.
I do want to say this though, and this is what the Packer fans though, on the other hand, they're acting like, oh, Tom Brady in the cold at Lambeau. You're like, hey, you know that he played the majority of his career with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, not exactly a Tampa Bay natives. Yeah,
in the cold. Like I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, cold weather. And I know that you think that Lambeau is some mystical place. You know what else is a mystical place? Arrowhead Stadium, where Tom Brady won the AFC Championship game in 2018 or during the 2018 season. So you can't. There's nothing like you can't narrative against Tom Brady in this either.
No. And who has more like mental drive, mental sharpness in the game than Tom Brady? Even after his 14, conference championship, that he's had and 7 Super Bowls or whatever, he still is like the hardest driven player in the whole league. So absolutely. Yeah, I'm not ruling him out. Yeah,
absolutely. But let's get to it. Let's what do we think? What do we think the Packers are going to do in this game? Or I guess I'm kind of tipping your pick. I think I'm sorry, but who is the machine picking?
Well, I mean, it's sort of, if you listen to anything I said, the machine's going to take the Packers, but not by a huge margin. I've got machine Green Bay 28 and Tampa Bay 25. So still a relatively high scoring game, 53 points, but just a margin of 3 in favor of Green Bay.
I can respect that. But of course, in the least surprising development of the season, I'm going to be going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who at the beginning of the playoffs, this is the team, the Super Bowl matchup that I picked was Chiefs, Buccaneers. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay because again, we threw out all the narratives. The one thing that I'm focusing in on is, and I know that Michael Thomas has been battling some injuries, and there's no way, he didn't have a catch against the Buccaneers, and there's no way that you're going to hold Davante Adams to no catches. Davante Adams is going to make catches. He's going to make plays. It's dumb to think that he won't. But if the Buccaneers can go about that and kind of slow him down, and you are putting the game in the hands of Robert Tonyan and Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Aaron Jones, who's a good player, obviously. Their running backs look good. I will take that because I think that there's not one player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you can be like, well, if we take away this player, then we've shut them down. Because we saw against the New Orleans Saints, Leonard Fournette was their leading receiver. They figured it out. And there were a couple of play calls in that game that really surprised me. There were 2 third and short situations where one, Tom Brady went deep to Antonio Brown, and the other one, he went deep to Rob Gronkowski. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Get the first down. And even when and as great as Leonard Fournette played, when Ronald Jones got in there, he looked like he had an extra gear. So I think that there's just so many weapons for this Tampa Bay team. And listen, Cam Akers went out there and had a great game against the Green Bay Packers. He looked amazing. And if the Rams would have had any quarterback play at all, that game would have been so much different. And honestly, and you think of the things that went in the Packers' direction. Like, by the way, 4th and 1, and the Rams were smartly going for it. I love Sean McVay. They were going to go for it on 4th and 1. Now, one of the Packer players moves, draws the Rams guard off sides, which any other team in the league, that goes against the defense. That's offsides on the defense. Oh, but it's the Packers at home. Of course this call is going against the Rams. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm just saying, I don't know. Like, I wish if we had like that Nickelodeon, when Nate was trying to explain things to Gabby, and it would have been a situation where like, hey, Gabby, like how your parents say that they have no favorite child, but you know that they do? That's the way the NFL feels. Like, oh, we love every team. You love some teams more than others. It wasn't surprising to me because, like, if they call that correctly and give the Rams the first down there, again, this is a lot of things. Like, I'm going a lot of layers deep. I just think that the Buccaneers might have too much. And if they can run the football with Ronald Jones and Lenny Fournette, I think that they can shorten the game a little bit. And I think they can come out with a win of 28-24. They just have to make a couple of stops. The Packers, the third quarter, the second half, they let teams hang around way too long. We saw it with the Carolina Panthers. We saw it last week. The Rams, the Rams were in that game, even though it looks on paper like the Packers blew them out. Statistically, they blew them out. Score-wise, they blew them out. But when you were watching the game, you still had the sense that the Rams were in it. So I think the Buccaneers will be able to push it over the top. I think Tom Brady's going to go out there and prove something. So I'm going to take the Bucs. So this is Rank of the Machine or complete opposites this week.
Great. Yeah. So let me ask you a question though. If they take out Devontae Adams, Rodgers is pretty good at making, everyday working men like into pretty good receivers. You don't think so?
Did you not see Scotty Miller catch a ball? Miller time. Like that. Yeah, that's what these quarterbacks do. They make other players do well. I mean, the Saints were doing it too. The Saints had other guys who were making plays for them. Now, obviously, Taysom Hill was out, so that was a huge benefit to them, to the Bucs. They do that, but I think like there's a difference between guys like Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams and the second and third receiver.
No question.
Like, I agree. Like, listen, I'm not saying the Packers are going to get blown out, and it's not going to be a close game or anything like that. But I'm just going to go. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. I hope that we can stave off Aaron Rodgers for one more season. I really do. It's not the same. It's clearly not the same. But last year, going into the NFC Championship game, the 49ers dismantled the Packers. And you're like, this isn't even going to be close. And I knew going into that game that into the NFC Championship game, I'm like, the Packers have no chance. Like, why are people trying to sell me this story that they have a chance? And the same thing is happening this year, but I do think it's a little bit different in that the Packers will play much better. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be close. It's obviously in Lambeau, so that's going to help out a little bit. But we've seen the Packers lose at Lambeau. Like it's not the impenetrable fortress that it was in the Vince Lombardi era or anything like that. Once Michael Vick got that win up there with the Atlanta Falcons, a dome team. And I'm only saying that because it was a dome team going to Lambeau and beating them. So don't act like a team just can't walk in there and win, especially when Tom Brady is the quarterback.
Those are my favorite wins ever. Randy Moss going into Lambeau on Monday Night Football when I was at college in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Those are great wins.
Yeah, so dome teams have done it. A warm weather team can do it. San Francisco's done it before. So don't lay into any of the narratives, but you can sit there and figure it out. And like, listen, again, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm completely wrong. If I go 0-2, it's not going to shock me. I'd love to see the Bills in the Super Bowl, so I'm not going to be that bummed out about it anyway. So I think
that's my second question. Can we get conspiratorial?
Oh, well, I think the conspiracy would want to have the Chiefs and the Packers because that's Super Bowl I. These are the favorite sons of the NFL. I think Patrick Mahomes, but I mean, God, you know what? How fun though.
Yeah, I think you're going where I'm going. I saw a really interesting tweet from, I can't remember, I should give credit where credit's due, but said if it's Bills and Tom Brady, you've got like the Star Wars of Super Bowls, right? The Rebels up against, Darth Vader, the Emperor, whatever you want to say. I mean, that would be an amazing storyline, I think.
No,
Bills.
100%. And you think about it, because the Bills smacked around the Patriots in week 16, much to the dismay of my fantasy team with Stephon Diggs scoring 3 touchdowns. It would be amazing that the Bills would finally, because the Bills beat the Patriots, but they did beat Tom Brady. So if the Bills could go out there and beat Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, that is very good. And by the way, I love Star Wars Episode 8, but I think I've now come around to people who feel like Finn did not get the proper storyline that he should have gotten, which, first of all, J.J. Abrams should have just done 8. But anyways, that's a story for another time. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's it. I left you speechless. And anyway, let's cut it off there. We've it's amazing that we had 2 games and we went longer than we've gone this entire time. But thanks to everybody who has been hanging out, checking us out. Of course, if you're listening to us on the Adam Rank Podcast, big thanks to Mitch Hine. I talked about Strixon earlier. Thank you for allowing me to be one of your testers with these fine golf balls. Like I've stepped up my golf game, so now I'm going to start playing with better golf balls. So thanks to Strixon for that, and thanks to the machine, man. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate you.
My pleasure, man. It's fun every time.
All right. Well, we'll be back once again to discuss the Super Bowl matchup to see who is correct. But until that time, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week or in 2 weeks. No, we'll be back next week. We'll break it all down, and we'll see you then. See you guys.